Happy Wednesday, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. A couple of segments for you. We'll delve into some of them back and forth from this week up in Chicago with residents upset about tax dollars going to undocumented migrants that Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, calls asylum seekers, and the back and forth over federal funding, the city's budget. They got crunch time upon them to try to get a spending plan together by the end of the month, but they're facing $1 billion deficit. So a lot of back and forth there, and also how to handle violent non-citizens, especially with New York's mayor saying, hey, we're going to work with the Trump administration. But what's Johnson's take up in Chicago? We'll tackle that. But up next, we'll get to the latest filing in the case challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban. Monday was the deadline for litigants to file briefs about whether or not a stay should be given to hold off the injunction. But the state, they ended up replying to the plaintiff's reply. So that is the latest filing we'll tackle, and that was filed late yesterday. So stay tuned. We'll get to that here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to get the podcast where you get podcasts and wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily as part of America's Talking Network. Come Monday, the injunction put on the state of Illinois to enjoin them from enforcing the gun ban could kick in after the 30-day stay from District Judge Stephen McGlynn will be lifted. He issued a permanent injunction back last month, but in ordering that injunction, he put a stay on his order for 30 days. Right now, it's in the appeals court, and there's some interesting back and forth. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for being with us each and every weekday morning as part of America's Talking Network for Illinois in Focus. We've been tracking the gun ban litigation, and the latest we'll pull up here. This is from the court docket in the appeals court, because as you've got this case that's progressed, the state banned semi-automatic firearms like rifles, shotguns, and handguns, magazines over certain capacities. That happened in January 2023. It was a bill that was gutted and replaced during lame duck session, and in just a handful of days, it was passed by the General Assembly and into the governor's hands, and he signed it, so it went into effect. About a week later, lawsuits started filing in. State lawsuits, federal lawsuits, plaintiffs saying that their Second Amendment rights were being infringed. A lot of different arguments made, but the cases that really stuck around were the cases consolidated in the Southern District of Illinois Federal Court. Now, if you recall, preliminary grounds, the district court granted an injunction in April 2023. It only lasted 6 days before the state got a stay on that injunction while the appeal played through, and then ultimately the appeals court overturned the injunction on preliminary grounds. All right, so after the appeals court took that action, plaintiffs then decided to try to take the case to the U.S. Supreme Court on preliminary grounds. And earlier this year, Justice Clarence Thomas denied taking up the case on preliminary grounds out of Illinois because it wasn't done yet. He wants final judgment on these cases. They're anticipating getting a case on final judgment. Could it be the Maryland case that's currently in for being talked about during a conference on December 13th with the U.S. Supreme Court? So we'll be watching that. But the Illinois case, after the Supreme Court earlier this year said, no, we're not taking this, it's not ripe yet, It went back to the district court where Judge Stephen McGlynn held that 4-day bench trial and heard all of the experts that the state and the plaintiffs brought forward, talking about the difference between military-grade firearms and firearms that are available to civilians. After that 4-day bench trial, a few weeks later, you had the judge issue a permanent injunction on final order. This is in the district court. He issues the injunction, but he grants a stay. The state then files for an appeal in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. And the appeals court then said, hey, the judge's ruling's deficient. You guys need to respond why we shouldn't narrowly put this back to the district court for a more clear order. We also had the appeals courts go ahead and give a deadline for both sides to give their arguments as to whether or not a stay should be granted as the appeal plays out in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. So those were the two different things that the plaintiffs and the state were being asked to respond to in the appeals court, with that Monday, December 9th deadline coming up for when McGlynn's stay on his injunction will lift and the injunction would kick in. So the timing here is interesting. So we previously and yesterday we reviewed all these different documents that were filed by the state and by the plaintiffs. All right, and the most recent were about the issue of whether or not a stay should be granted. The state filed that back on the 15th of November. The plaintiffs responded by Monday, and then late yesterday, the state ended up replying to the plaintiffs. So we have that now in front of us. So let's go ahead and tackle this here. Reply in support of motion to stay injunction pending appeal. So this is from the states. For the second time in 2 years, the district court enjoined defendants from enforcing the Protect Illinois Communities Act in its entirety and statewide. Defendants have explained why the court's opinion, which conflicts with opinions of the 1st, 4th, and D.C. circuits, as well as this court's own opinion in Bevis v. Naperville. That's the case that Robert Bevis with Law Weapons has against the city of Naperville that was filed before Illinois even enacted a statewide ban. But the defense yesterday, the state of Illinois, in their filing, said it's likely to be reversed and why its injunction, if it takes effect, will damage public safety in Illinois. Plaintiff's response identifies no persuasive reason to allow the injunction to take effect. The court should stay the injunction and preserve the status quo while it considers the appeal. They make their argument. The stay motion complies with Rule 8, and they talk about Rule 8. Let's go to another headline here. Defendants are likely to succeed on the merits. They say that in their filing from yesterday, late, the defendants explained why they are likely to succeed on appeal. Plaintiffs failed to show that the weapons regulated by the Act are arms protected by the Second Amendment, and defendants established a historical tradition of regulating dangerous and unusual weapons. The plaintiffs' responses are unavailing, they say. Also, another headline here, assault weapons and large capacity magazines are not arms. They argue that first, as defendants explained, the district court erred in concluding that assault weapons and LCMs are arms covered by the Second Amendment. The record showed that assault weapons and LCMs are more like military-grade weaponry than firearms suitably used for self-defense, the state argued. And the district courts reached a contrary conclusion only by rejecting the framework that Bevis set out and accepting arguments that Bevis rejected. Plaintiffs' attempts to rehabilitate the district court's Step 1 holding lack merit. They go on to talk about plaintiffs' primary defense of the opinion below. In this court, Bevis specifically contemplated that the parties might amass a factual record that would demonstrate that this court's preliminary views are mistaken and that what occurred below. And that's what plaintiffs, they say, are half right. The plaintiffs, the parties did compile an extensive record regarding, among other things, the weapons regulated by the Act and their similarities to military-grade technology, but the district court's Step 1 reasoning did not turn on its engagement with that record. Rather, the court's reasoning turned largely on two facts, both of which were considered and rejected by Bevis. The assault weapons and LCMs are commercially popular, and that assault weapons like the AR-15 are unlike their military counterparts because they are capable only of semi-automatic fire. The district court, in other words, did not sift through a mountain of evidence to reach its one-step conclusion, as plaintiffs suggest. Rather, the court issued an opinion that largely tracked its prior views and the reasoning of the Bevis dissent. So it continues on there. It's about 13 pages of arguments where they lay out why they think the stay should be granted and the injunction should not take place. They say that the act is consistent with history and tradition. They give their rationale for that. You also have another headline here: the equitable factors necessitate a stay. Finally, a stay should be granted because of the equitable factors favoring restraining the status quo pending appeal. Plaintiffs' handful of counter-arguments do not show otherwise, the state argues. Plaintiffs' primary critique is that defendants merely speculate that allowing the injunction to take effect could damage public safety in Illinois, but there is a documented link between mass shootings and access to assault weapons, the state argues. And as the D.C. Circuit observed during the week in which California's analogous LCM ban was enjoined, over 1 million LCMs flooded into the state. So this is hardly a case in which the claimed harm to the public interest is based entirely on speculation. The harm to the public interests rests on the well-supported connection between assault weapons and violent crime. Defendants pointed to the evidence in the stay motion, but plaintiffs did not address it, electing instead to simply assert that defendants' arguments rest on conjecture, but saying it does not make it so. They go on to conclude, final paragraph here, plaintiffs also do not seriously dispute the injunction's limited scope underscores the need for a stay. Plaintiffs do not dispute, for instance, that the district court enjoined the statewide enforcement of provisions that plaintiffs did not challenge and that the court agreed were constitutional. Plaintiffs simply say that if there's an issue with the clarity of the district court's injunction, the court can address that on remand. But the issue is not that the injunction is unclear. Rather, the district court clearly stated that it was enjoining the entire act based on its view that its provisions were not severable, meaning you can't separate pieces out of it. Plaintiffs appear to agree that the description of the injunction, so the issue is not the injunction's clarity, but its breadth. Plaintiffs assert that the injunction is not unbounded because it applies only to citizens in Illinois who wish to exercise their Second Amendment rights. But that is circular, they argue. The state says the court's injunction is flawed and overbroad. It should be stayed pending appeal. The court should stay the injunction pending appeal. So that's the conclusion here. So that's the latest filing. Again, the state filing that late yesterday in response to the plaintiffs saying that there shouldn't be a stay on the injunction and the injunction should be allowed to kick in, preventing the state from ultimately enforcing the gun and magazine ban. So again, it's in the state's, the appeals court's hands here, the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. And what happens, we'll obviously be watching that docket for any orders that come out, anticipating a couple of different orders. One dealing with the issue of the stay, whether a new stay will be put into place. The other one dealing with whether or not to narrowly remand the case back to the district court for a clearer order, according to the appeals court. Keep it here. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We'll update you each and every time there's an update to be had. Get headlines at thecentersquare.com and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus. One big city mayor says he's looking forward to working with the incoming Trump administration to deal with violent non-citizens. Another big city mayor saying that he's not going to, put his values to the side and won't be bought. It's interesting times we are in, and to cover it all here, I'm Greg Bishop. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Get news headlines in your inbox. Subscribe to the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. And be sure to get this podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and wake up with us live. Pretty vibrant chat each and every weekday morning as part of America's Talking Network when we go live at 8 Central. So yesterday we talked a lot about the Chicago City Council meeting that took place, and a lot of public comments upset about the way that the the city has handled the migrant situation. Here's just one public comment from Monday during a budget hearing where a resident decided to share their concerns as somebody who is in this country as a migrant.
Our next speaker is Giovanna Alvarez.
Like I said, I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States legally. I was very fortunate to do that. I have never been a delinquent, and I am very, very embarrassed for what my other fellow Latin American citizens are doing in the city. On behalf of the people that work, on behalf of the people that pay taxes, on behalf of the people that contribute to the city, I'd like to make clear that not everyone is the same. These people came with a wide door open, and they feel entitled to many things that nobody has. There are US citizens suffering from poverty. There are US citizens on public aid, and these people are here just enjoying the benefits, becoming delinquents, and they have no consequences.
So that's just one resident that spoke out during the city council meeting. We'll likely hear another one, especially as the city continues to grapple with $1 billion budget deficit, and they've got to get a balanced budget together by the end of the month. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But during the news conference that happened after the city council meeting on Monday, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson was asked about potential withholding of federal funds from Chicago over issues like being a sanctuary city.
Given the incoming Trump administration's position on sanctuary cities, are you concerned at all about how this budget, the 2025 budget, is going to be impacted in terms of federal funding?
Well, federal funding around a host of things I'm concerned about. The president-elect and former president of the United States of America has demonstrated ill intentions around our public education system. He has demonstrated ill intent around the environment. There's still yet not a full analysis of what impact these tariffs would have on our overall economy.
He went on to talk more about inflation and the price of potato chips, and didn't really address the issue of, possibly not having more federal funds come from federal taxpayers for the city of Chicago. But he was also asked a follow-up. Well, I mean, what about, the working with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, to go after non-citizens in the country illegally?
Asking police officers to behave as ICE agents is antithetical to building community trust, right? But, I guess we shouldn't expect more for someone who was a part of an operation where the Capitol was attacked on January 6th, where police officers were trampled on by mobsters, essentially.
So you got the mayor, again, not directly answering the question of working with ICE, for instance, other than to say he doesn't want Chicago police to be turned into ICE agents. Illinois law prohibits state and local law enforcement from cooperating with immigration officials to enforce immigration law. That's the bottom line here. So even if a downstate sheriff wants to work with ICE to get what they see as non-citizens here illegally, they can't legally do that. So that's one impediment. So will that mean ICE does this on their own accord with increased presence, not having to rely on state and local law enforcement? Not too sure. But in New York, here is Mayor Eric Adams yesterday, and this made the rounds all over the place because he says he's ready to work with the Trump administration.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the Board of Czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're open to that?
Open to
hearing what their plan is to deport some of these folks, and you think the city, in some circumstances, should cooperate with ICE.
Let me. You know what's interesting? And I was talking to the team the other day. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city. And what they said in our country, they said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. That was their position. So this is not a new position.
So Adams goes on to talk about, working with ICE to get rid of violent non-citizen migrants. A different take from Mayor Brandon Johnson earlier this week during a news conference.
Some Democrats have hinted that they support the idea of helping address immigrants who may have committed a crime. Is that like a line? Is that something that the city is willing to work with?
Well, look, there's no secret here. I've said this repeatedly, that we need immigration reform policies, substantive, transformational policy shift and change. The incoming Congress has an opportunity to do what the current Congress has refused to do, though there's still time. There is a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration bill that could still be passed in the House.
So he talks more about that and doesn't necessarily get to, again, explicitly saying, yes, we're going to work with ICE to get rid of the violent non-citizens. Different from what New York's mayor had to say. So interesting contrast there. But again, the city of Chicago facing a substantial budget deficit and a lot of concern about where dollars are going to go, especially with this issue of the city having spent hundreds of millions on non-citizen migrants. Here's the mayor being asked about another proposal to raise taxes on individuals in the city, and this comes weeks after the city council unanimously voted down Johnson's proposed $300 million property tax increase. There's less than a month to get this budget together. What's going to happen? What's about this idea of having the property tax pegged to inflation?
Going ahead with CPI for the property tax is taking CPI a way to make it easier for aldermen to, hey, this is the ordinance, give them cover, if you will, to support the property tax increase that you believe may be necessary to pass the budget?
Well, look, I don't know if there's any alder that's feeling that anything that we do in this moment is going to make life easier for them. What I can say, though, is that we have made a commitment, my administration, to pensioners and to workers and to families in this city. The budget will be balanced.
And he went on to talk about how it requires, quote, progressive revenue. We touched on that a bit. Earlier in the day, though, during a budget hearing, a resident got up to express their concerns about the city's spending.
The next speaker, Danielle Carter.
Okay, so I got a great way how we can what we can do with this budget. First, let's start with cutting off illegals, getting free everything. Free housing, free schooling, free food. Yeah, let's start with that. That'll save us a lot of money. What, $600 million? Let's start there. Whatever property tax hike he's proposing, or whatever taxes he's proposing on the Chicago citizens, I'm letting y'all know for real. And now, if you all vote on anything to raise all taxes or anything, because we are already suffering, homeowners, you all will not be in those seats.
So saying, hey, get rid of the migrant spending, that'll help with the budget. She also went on to talk about how they should get rid of their police detail as well. But also put a warning out there that any property tax increase is going to be politically detrimental to those sitting on the Chicago City Council. Back to the mayor, question that William Kelly, reporter out of Chicago, independent reporter, he had some questions for the mayor in particular about this idea of tax increases that Chicagoans see as just a migrant tax increase.
Chicagoans on the street are telling me that your liquor tax is nothing more than a tax on the working man to fund your plan to hide migrants from Donald Trump and Tom Homan. At what point will you put Chicago first? At what point will you shift to putting Chicagoans ahead of migrants?
Well, as I've said from the very beginning, it's always been a part of my value system to invest in people. And that's why in this budget, and you've seen it in my previous budget, We made a commitment to hire young people. Last year, almost 70% of those who received jobs through our youth investment were black children. In fact, 97% of those young people were black and brown. The 3,400 new affordable homes that we've put forward, this was very much what people were calling for, and we've done that.
Hey, he goes on to discuss more about the investments he says are really helping the community. And again, we'll see the results, I guess, as time progresses here. But that's just some of the latest back and forth. We'll continue to watch this. Of course, January 20th, President-elect Donald Trump will take office. And this immigration issue is top of the mind. Some of the things he's going to be doing. So how this is going to play out, we'll be watching. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning at 8 o'clock. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and get the headlines in your inbox with the Center Square. Subscribe to the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. All right, that's all I got for you today. You guys have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. Tomorrow, we'll obviously delve a little bit more into the Chicago situation. I'm set to talk with P. Ray Eastley, somebody who's been speaking in front of the Chicago City Council during public comments. Set to talk with her a little bit later on today, get her reaction to some of this back and forth, especially with the budget looming. But we'll also be watching what happens with the gun and magazine ban, tons of other things popping off as well, heading into the Christmas holiday. So hopefully you guys are able to kick back, relax, and enjoy the Yuletide. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air, and you can find that, and we can connect that way. Have a great day. Enjoy your Wednesday.